Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about Storgårds Antheil and the latest issue in Chandos' ongoing series of Storgårds Antheil orchestral music. Now, as you may know, all of this stuff, or most of it anyway, was recorded by CPO in recordings with the Frankfurt Radio Symphony Orchestra conducted by Hugh Wolf. Those are very, very good. Well played, well recorded, but then again, so are these. So the question is availability. The artists on this series have been the BBC Philharmonic, conducted by John Storgårds. Now, I have my issues with the BBC Philharmonic. I always have. I think they're a terribly uninteresting orchestra by and large. But it depends on who's conducting them. If you get a conductor who's interesting or who gets them energized, wonderful things can happen. It's like anything else. It's like Mahler's statement that there are no bad orchestras, only bad conductors. And Storgårds is not a bad conductor. He's a very good conductor, and this music seems to be congenial to him. This disc contains, 5 different works, a very wide-ranging and eclectic selection. Now, Antheil, as you may know, had a reputation as the bad boy of music from his work in Paris in the 1920s and teens, or whenever he was there, the early decades of the 20th century. He was famous for the Ballet mécanique, a piece that used aircraft propellers as part of its radical aesthetic agenda. After that, he came back to the United States and worked at a bunch of jobs, including writing a Lonely Hearts newspaper column, and his music became much more eclectic and also less inclined to shock. Now, there are two ways that you can kind of look at Antheil. On the one hand, you can look at him as either an enormously gifted and extremely eclectic artist, or a guy who just had lots of talent and had no clue what to do with it, because his music is all over the place. And you'll find that on this disc. I mean, really, really, really quite graphically. For example, let's go through it and see what we have. First, the Overture, McConkey's Ferry. Now, McConkey's Ferry is supposed to be sort of a patriotic overture summarizing George Washington's crossing of the Delaware in Trenton, New Jersey in 1776. The place of the crossing was McConkey's Ferry, and it represented a turning point in the American Revolutionary War. Now, Trenton, New Jersey, for those of you who are not, familiar with the place, is the capital of New Jersey, and it is, shall we say, a city not known for its charms. It used to be a great manufacturing town because it was on the Delaware River. It fell into desuetude, if you want to call it that. But it's famous because if you get on Amtrak and go from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, you go past Trenton, and there's a bridge that has the sign on it, "Trenton makes, the world takes," back from its manufacturing heyday. And since the manufacturing heyday as well is over, there was a sort of East Coast joke about Trenton that changes what that sign should say from "Trenton makes, the world takes" to "What the world excretes, Trenton eats." Anyway, I just had to share that with you. People, if you live in Trenton, I'm sorry, but it's a tough town. Let's put it that way. So anyway, the Overture is bubbly and fun and vibrant and somewhat militaristic and tuneful, as you might expect. And that's the Overture, and it has nothing to do with what Trenton makes or excretes or anything else happening. But that's sort of the Trenton story that you got to know if you're from the northeast part of the United States. Anyway, the next bit is the suite from the ballet Capital of the World, which was written in the early 1950s. Now, Capital of the World is a short story by Ernest Hemingway, and the ballet is about a restaurant dishwasher in a second-rate Spanish hotel. His name is Paco, in case you're curious. He wants to be a bullfighter because a lot of sort of washed-up bullfighters hang out in his hotel. And another guy who works in the kitchen creates a mechanical bull out of a chair with some knives, and they all get drunk, and he challenges Paco to ward off the charging bull, which Paco unfortunately fails to do, and he gets stabbed and dies. That's the story. The music itself conveys very little of that, as far as I can tell. I mean, it's bold and colorful and very Spanish sounding in some places. It has a farruca, one of those flamenco farruca type dances. There's one of them in Falla's, the three-cornered hat, and it's lively and delightful. I mean, the music is fun to listen to. Virgil Thomson thought it was a terrific piece. If you're listening, if you care about Virgil Thomson's opinion, then there you go. I like it. It's very enjoyable. It's about about 18 minutes long here in this particular suite. It's wonderful. Next comes The Golden Bird. Now, this was an early piece from the 1920s. It's marked, subtitled Chinoiserie. And this particular chinoiserie was originally composed for the piano and then orchestrated by the composer. It's very evocative. I don't think it sounds particularly chinoise, but it's fun to listen to it. It's only about 5 minutes long. And then you get the Nocturne in Skyrockets. I have no idea what that means. It is nocturnal. That I'll grant it. The skyrockets part, well, the parts that are less nocturnal must be the skyrockets. But finally, we get Symphony Number One, which is a really, really cool piece. It's subtitled Zingaresca. No one's quite sure what a zingaresca really is. I mean, a la zingarese, that sort of thing that Haydn used to say or whatever for his Hungarian or gypsy-inspired music. But the second movement is marked alla zingarese, poi ragtime. And if that isn't a puzzling mix of elements, I don't know what it is. It sounds neither particularly Hungarian nor particularly ragtime-ish. It does remind me a lot of Schulhoff's Entartete Musik, his first symphony, that sort of stuff. It's very evocatively scored. It's got lots of sound effects, harp glissandos and celesta passages and lots of swats on the tam-tam for atmosphere, and it's all stop and go. It has one episode after another, and it's fast, then it's slow, then it's meditative, then it's eruptive. The beginning of the finale sounds a lot like bits of Petrushka sort of thrown into it in places, and the ending is kind of abrupt and somewhat unsatisfying. The piece never really coalesces into anything definitive, expressively speaking, but it's wonderful to listen to. I mean, it's absolutely captivating in terms of orchestral color, and it never sits still for very long. I mean, there's something always going on, and the colors are constantly changing. So it's a lot of fun to listen to, and it's not terribly long. It's maybe half an hour, a little more than that. So it doesn't bore you. It's just a very, very hard piece to pigeonhole. And that's the trouble with Antheil generally. You can't really listen to any of this stuff and say, aha, that must be George Antheil. That's not the way his music worked. It's all very well written of its type, and it just has a whole bunch of types. But one way or another, this is an absolutely excellent disc. The performances are great. The sound is great. The music, like I said, is a just colorful mishmash of stuff from all over the place, and you may very well enjoy it as much as I did. So if you're interested in Antheil, give it a shot. I have a feeling that you'll be quite captivated by it. And if you have the CPO set, there's no reason, I think, to replace anything there with these, unless the music is so fascinating to you that you just want to hear some different performances of it, which I can well understand. It's your choice. It really is. That's basically the story with George Antheil. So thank you so much for joining me. Please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and keep on listening. Bye-bye.